Okay, good. So happy to have everyone here. Welcome from Yayasan Hasanah. I'm Hanis from Communications Department of Yayasan Hasanah. So once again, welcome. We are about to begin. So if we can have members of the audience being seated here, if you'd like to move up front, we welcome you to do so. All right, and we will begin now. But before that, a few reminders. Please keep your mobile phones on silent modes. Turn off your alarms that you snoozed this morning. And of course, if you'd like to help yourselves to the coffee and tea, feel free to bring it here while you enjoy the session. Also, we have a mihun. Feel free also. Okay, and second reminder is please feel free to ask questions. I think we have a Q&A session right after the sharing session by our esteemed panelists. And in doing so, to make the best out of this time, I'd advise for these questions to be relevant to this session. All right? And with that, we will begin. Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Now, welcome to Yayasan Hasanah. A bit about Yayasan Hasanah, if you are not as familiar. Yayasan Hasanah is actually the foundation of Khazanah Nasional Berhad, and we are an independent foundation established in 2015. And since 2015, we have actually reached 2.4 million people in Malaysia across our education, arts, community development, and environment, of course. And so those are our focus areas, and in doing so we have worked with over 470 partners across these pillars. In these collaborations we have actually supported more than 600 projects. So we as part of this ecosystem, it is actually our responsibility, we feel, to share this amazing knowledge and put these learnings at the forefront, and with that, we bring these knowledge sessions, these ilmu sessions to those in the sector. And this is one of the many ilmu sessions that we have conducted over the years. And with that, without further ado, let me introduce Ms. Anna from the Knowledge Department of Yayasan Hasanah to tell you more about ilmu and perhaps kickstart today's event.
Hi everyone, good morning, and thank you for making the time to join us here today. My name is Anna, and I'm the Senior Knowledge Manager at our Monitoring, Evaluation, Learning and Knowledge team under Yayasan Hasanah. For those of you joining us for the first time, Ilmus are our knowledge sharing forums, which we host quite regularly, focusing on topics which are of interest to our impact areas. The pillars as mentioned by Hanis just now: education, community development, environment, as well as arts and public spaces. So these sessions are aimed to provide a platform of discourse to enable and support the learning of innovative approaches and best practices in the social impact sector for our partners, stakeholders, as well as for ourselves in Hasanah. In today's session, with our distinguished speakers, we will delve into the realm of journalism and how images and storytelling possess the evocative power to bring positive social change. In Malaysia, the impact of human activity on the environment has been most felt by certain communities. And often, journalists are the ones who rise to the occasion, fueled by their obligation to tell the story right and commitment to documenting important stories. They tell the true stories with dedication and bravery. Journalists play a crucial role at the intersection of government, civil society organizations, as well as policymakers to raise awareness, fostering empathy with the capacity to ignite a collective consciousness and ultimately to inspire action. So today, our speakers will share from their experiences with us in investigating the transformative power of photojournalism and storytelling. In their quest to uncover the truth, what are the obstacles that they have faced? Or what is the story behind the story? So we seek to find that out, as well as how can you and I contribute to positive social change right where we are. Without further ado, let me pass the time to Ivy Wong Abdullah, our Head of Environment, to start us off.
given sort of the detail to the session today. I'll not go into that, I'll skip that. With us, we've got two esteemed journalists. I'm very, very honored to have both of you here. Since we have two speakers, we're going to do it in two sessions. So we'll start with Shekar first, and then we'll go with his story, and then we'll go into Amy. Okay? So, how many of you know Shekar? SC Shekar. Raise your hands. All right. Okay, we have some friendlies and we have new ones. I think you'll be amazed with what Shekar has brought to light. Shekar is a trained lawyer, right? So he has worked in the realm of journalism and he has done photo documentary as part of his hobby and his work, documented across India and also Myanmar. And then with that, also his passion to look at the issues of our communities of orang asli here in Malaysia. So without further ado, Shekar, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you. Thank you, Ivy and Anna and Dr. Shahira, who is not here today.
Yeah.
And thanks for having us to speak to you about what we do as journalists, as photojournalists, and how we try to tell our stories. Now, as she said, I've spent a long time working with our indigenous communities in this country, trying to document and to try and tell their stories. It's not always been easy because the community itself is quite reclusive. You have to spend a lot of time with them to gain their trust and to be accepted. And this is important when you're working with indigenous communities anywhere in the world. And you'll find that when you work with them and they begin to trust you, there's so many things that they will tell you. And I'm going to go on and tell you about these things shortly. So we're talking about the transformative power of photojournalism. It's a very powerful way of telling a story, especially with pictures, right? People relate to pictures very, very easily and very quickly. If you look at Instagram, look at Facebook, you just look at an image and you straight away know what's happening. That's the power of photography. And I think as photojournalists, we try to harness that power, to try and bring to light some of the many things that happen to us in the form of pictures, right? And very often, it's the difficult things that are so difficult to explain with words that we can actually portray very quickly with one image. You know what they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's true. But then I also believe that words are very important. You need the context behind every picture. You need to have the context. If you don't have the context, you can look at an image and not know what it means. Also, there's always this thing about, people say, pictures don't lie, but it can be a tool to a lot of untruth. This is a very important thing for you to understand how photography is being used today and how it's being manipulated and how people can actually tell a completely different narrative by using one picture and spinning a tale. And it happens all the time. So we will explore a few of these things, a few of these stories. Now, I'm going to talk about specifically something that I did with our indigenous community, especially the Orang Asli Jakun in Muazzam Shah in Bahar. This happened in 2019 while I was on a project to document the rivers of the country. It's one of the projects that I'm doing right now to see our waterways, our estuaries. And as you know, all communities, all civilizations have always began with being next to a river or next to an estuary or by the sea. So it's a very important thing to do. So as I was actually doing this project, I happened to go bumped into a community of orang asli Jakun who were living off a landfill. Now, this is basically a big, huge area the size of maybe 3 or 4 football fields where they dig holes and your household garbage, your garden waste, and sometimes even industrial waste gets thrown into the spit. And the orang asli that I went to see were actually doing recycling work. They were scavenging, trying to get food, trying to get recycled aluminum cans, whatever they could get, plastic bottles, and they were doing that when I first saw it. Now, it was really very, very difficult to see this happen. I've seen this happen in Bangladesh, I've seen this happen in Indonesia, but I never thought I'd see it happen here in my country. It's very, very difficult to look at. And what more, these were our orang asli. Now, if you are going to try and understand and try to help the orang asli, there's one thing that you must always know, that you have to look at yourself as pendatang. We all are. Unless you belong to one of the 19 groups of orang asli, we are all pendatangs. And in order to understand them, you need to have that at the back of your mind so that you can address the issues they have and with some empathy and compassion. And that's so important. Now, there are 19 ethnic groups, about 200,000 orang asli in total in Peninsular Malaysia. And that's only 0.7% of the total population of the country. And we need to look at it at those numbers. And it's such a small number, if you look at the big picture, it's a small number. There's so much we can do to help this community. And of course, it's difficult because they are so widespread. You find them in different parts of the country, in very remote areas, and therefore it becomes very difficult to help them. But there are many NGOs, there are government agencies who are doing their very best to try and help these people. I'm going to show you some examples of how this community, this one community, which is the case study here, I'm going to talk to you about how I bumped into them and how I documented. For 1 year, I stayed with them in this landfill. And I brought some pictures back to share with you. Okay? Now, the biggest problem that our orang asli face is the fact that they do not have clean water and they don't have electricity. Some who have moved closer to the city might have that, but most of them who live in rural Malaysia do not have electricity at all. Okay, this is the struggle for water. This is what I've titled this because this is so important. This is an image of a community of orang asli Jakun who live in Muazzam Shah. And this is where they go to have a bath every evening, and in the mornings too. But this water that they're bathing in is a stagnant pond. It fills up when it rains, and it dries up when it's in the dry season. And so the water is a concentrate of dishwashing liquid, soap, and all these things that they use to clean themselves. And there's no outlet for this water. So after a while, it begins to stink. You can't even walk past this pond. But they have no choice. They have no choice because there is no water. And why is there no water? When they can't even access groundwater. If you drill a hole in the ground, you will hit groundwater. But the groundwater in where they live is so polluted with pesticides and fertilizers that it cannot be drunk. It cannot be, it's not potable at all. Right? Alright, so here there's a series of 3 pictures that show you how difficult it is. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback. So how difficult it is to transport water. This village in Wazam Shah, this lady carried, you can see a concrete bunker where they have managed to get some rainwater, and from there she has to carry 5 gallon Tupperware, of water in her basket and carry it up almost 2 kilometers uphill. Now, just look at this picture. This is 2023. Do we need to live this way? Is it fair for our Orang Asli to live like this? It's terrible. We have no excuse. And yet, this lady, without complaining, carries this water 10 times a day, up and down. She walks up, and you can see the place is surrounded by rubber trees and oil palm estates, and she has to carry this up every day. And it's really difficult when it rains. When it rains, it's uphill, so when it rains, it becomes very slippery, and there's snakes, and there's scorpions, and all kinds of things in the undergrowth. And it's very difficult. So you have this family of 4 generations living in this one little dwelling, and they have to share this water resource. Look at her face. There's so much of suffering going on here. Look at those eyes. And yet they do not complain. They don't. They just carry on. They try to carry on living their life as they know it. Now, what's again very important is this. The Orang Asli in this country, in Peninsula, they would never need us at all if we did not go out and chop down their rainforests or poison their rivers. They wouldn't need us at all. They have survived for thousands of years in the rainforest without any help from us. In fact, when we came around and inflicted ourselves on their lands, on their lives, it has become very difficult for them. And that's how it is. We have actually caused most of the suffering that they are now going through. And the suffering is in so many different ways. Land grab. We have many cases in court now where the Orang Asli are fighting developers and mining companies for wrongly taking their land. And sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. But we have a good legal system, and we depend on this legal system to help them. All right? You can see how they live as a community. They cook between the rubber trees. They just put up a little thing, and you can see this. The irony of this picture is this. Sorry, I'm not sure you can see that. You can see in the corner where they have no electricity, they have no water, but they have 4G. They have 4G, and you have these kids in their phones playing video games, gambling. This is what's happening. Yeah, they have access to the whole world, but they have no water and no electricity. This is sad. They go out and work, and they come back, and they have no way of expanding any energy, so they do this. They just use their mobile phones. Everybody can afford a mobile phone now, and they can too. And this is the irony of this picture. And over here, you can see how traditionally they've always shared responsibilities. You can see how while the women eat, the men look after the babies. It's something that is given. Right?
How do they charge their food?
Oh, they have little. Somebody asked me how do they charge their phone. They have batteries. They have power banks. They have, some of them have solar power. And some of the NGOs that I've been working with have been actually giving them solar panels, and they are able to charge their phones. So every evening or twice a day in the mornings, they go down and have a bath. They carry all their belongings with them, their soap bars, their dishwashing liquids, and they go out and try to clean themselves. Now, in this case, you can see how they're cleaning themselves. They're washing their clothes. And on the right, you have this picture of this boy who's OKU. He's unable to get any help from anywhere. So he's there with his mother, and they try to clean themselves. Now, one of the questions I'm always asked is, why don't the Orang Asli children go to school? Right? Now, this is very sad, because when you go to school, even if you get to go to school, if you can't clean yourself and you go to class, you'll get ostracized. You will make enemies very quickly, right? No one will want to sit next to you. You know how children can be very cruel, and this is what happens. So they go and and after a while, they just don't want to go to school anymore because they are picked on. And the root cause of this is they don't have water. It's a very simple solution. It's a very simple solution. If you can give them water and electricity, they will do well. I'm going to show you how this one community has actually done so well for themselves. Alright? And you can see in the far end, the children use it as a swimming pool. So everything goes on there. And please look at the sky above. What do you see? Can you see the power lines? There are power lines there, which means there is chance for electricity to come into the village. There are water pipes too on the main road, which is just about 50 meters away. And yet, this community has got no water and no electricity. It's unacceptable. And unless the council, the municipal council, the government, the state governments do something about this, it's not going to change. We cannot uplift the lives of our Asli if we don't give them the basics. Once you give them the basics, you'll find that they do really, really well. Okay, so this is one community. So this community that I'm going to show you pictures of now are the community that I bumped into. It's the community that I bumped into in the landfill, right? So this is the landfill area. It's an aerial shot taken with a drone, and you can see it looks quite small here, but this is the entire area. And you can see there are Orang Asli villages all around. It is in the landfill, right? And as opposed to what some people saying, you know, when this story was published in the newspapers, everybody was saying, no, the Orang Asli don't live in the landfill. Yeah, in fact, they do, right? And you can actually see that. Right. So this is what I was confronted with. Pictures of children. Now, I have no issues at all if adults work in landfills with proper clothing and proper protective gear to do the work that they do in recycling work and salvaging usable materials. I have no problems with that. But when you have children who should be in school doing this, it becomes a problem. It really, really hurts. Of course, these children, it's just another day Yes, so, and if you go around, you'll see this very often. They all have these t-shirts given to them by the previous government. You know, malu apa bosku. It's all over the place. So somehow or other, even in the deepest recesses of our rainforests, you have orang asli villages with these t-shirts. How it even got to them, no one knows. But you know, the missionary to send these clothes to them, it's quite good. I can imagine. You'd be surprised what children, how they're working. They work like adults. They actually work like adults. You'd be surprised at the efficiency in which they're able to do this kind of work. They were actually recycling. This little kid was removing metallic parts from a sink, and this boy was picking up electronics. And they know exactly how to do it. And of course, as children, they will make toys of anything. They hear, and he's pretending that he's sitting on a motorcycle, and they're having a great time. But these are children. And children will be children no matter where they go. You can see behind them this heap of garbage, right? You can see now, as soon as the garbage trucks come in, they come in about 10 or 20 at a time. They come in the mornings at about 10 or 11, and they begin to unload the garbage into the spit. Now, if you look carefully, you can see some of the adults already in the pit, and they are waiting to go. As soon as the garbage leaves, they will jump in. Now, you can see how that works. Look, these are children, right? Look at that child. He's gone into this pit, which is so deep, and he's helping his uncle put plastic bottles in a bag, and he's sending it out. It's so hazardous. This boy has got no gloves. He's not wearing shoes. When I was there photographing this, I spent a year with them. 1 year I stayed with them in that landfill. I smelled like garbage, I kid you not. It was so difficult to get used to. Every time I went back home, my wife would say, "Oh my God, just have a shower out in the garden. Don't come back." It was so stinky. I'm sure you've all experienced driving behind a garbage truck. And even after you get off, you can smell that garbage under your tires and your car. And imagine this. Imagine living there, right? Right, so you have that. And then you can see how he's struggling. He's struggling to send these things up. And those are his sisters and cousins also helping to pick up the garbage. In this picture, you can see how this boy up in the foreground is cut his legs on a glass. You can see the broken glass in the bottom. And you can see how the sign that says tempat pembuangan air licin. This is so toxic. And they're walking around, running around without shoes. He's cut himself. I have seen within this landfill, I've seen medical waste. I've seen syringes. I've seen bandages, bloody bandages. These things should have been thrown away in an incinerator, but no, it found its way into this place. I've seen garbage from Japan and Australia. How did they get in here? How did it get in here? Can you look at that child carrying that plastic bag, that large polythene bag? See what's in her mouth. She's 4 years old, and she has a pacifier in her mouth. This is a child. I mean, would you allow your children to go into a field like this? and they have become so good at doing this work. They immediately jump in, they put up the bottles, they take off the caps, they separate the caps from the bottles, they pick up cans. They know that the cans, the opener of the can is worth more than the can itself. And they do that. They separate that, and they again sort it out. I'll show you more pictures. Look at them. If a child were to fall into this pit, you'll never find the child. You'll never find it. I'm not sure whether there have been any deaths. No one has told me. But I can imagine if you were to fall in, you'll never be found. Especially if you hit your head and you become unconscious, and then without you knowing, the next truck is going to come and dump its garbage over you. And that's the end of you. It's 20 to 30 feet deep. See that mattress just now? These 4 kids carried this wet mattress. You can imagine how heavy a mattress is. And when the mattress is wet, they were actually carrying it. And they sold it for $10, for 10 ringgits. And this is the family that specializes in aluminum cans. And so this little boy removes the little tabs, and his mother and his sister do the same thing. And at the end of the day, all the recycled stuff is put together in little bags, and you can see how recyclers from Kuala Lumpur and Kuantan come and they buy it off them, right? So, like I said earlier, I have no problems if adults do this work, but children have no place in this setting. Yeah, one more thing. When I first went in to stay with these orang asli, the first people I had to make friends with, not just the orang asli, but the dogs. And if you're not friends with the dogs, it will eat you. They will attack you. Because they are there, they protect the orang asli. Alright? And so the first thing I had to do was feed the dogs. And then they would let me stay with them. And they are very, very tough, these dogs, you can see. And this was a picture that really tugged at I really felt so bad looking at this picture. You see that he's looking at a calendar of a graduation ceremony. And these kids in the graduation ceremony are throwing their hats. And he's looking at it, who knows what's going on in his head. Maybe he wants to know what they're doing. Maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he understands that it's some celebration. But the irony of all this. And there she is with her plastic bottles. When these pictures were first published, the Orang Asli department denied it. Everybody denied it. No, there's no such thing. This thing doesn't happen in Malaysia. This is what happened. And of course, I had to have evidence, which is why I spent a year documenting. I did videos of the whole thing, so that there was concrete evidence, right? This is the landscape, the very arid landscape that's so toxic, and these children live there. You can see these packets of milk that's been thrown away by a supermarket. It's expired milk and drinks. And they actually drink that. The Orang Asli are very closely knit. Their families are very, very closely knit. And they live together. And I'm going to show you some pictures of these two. When you look at these two girls here, I'm going to show you some pictures later. So gambling is it's a very common practice within the community. It's a way of, I suppose, keeping sane. Yeah, she's 2 years old. 2 years old, and she spends all her time in the landfill. And that's their little playground. A little hammock, and in the evenings, they walk back home, which is just about 10-20 meters away. Look at those faces. So after making numerous attempts to contact the relevant government agency responsible for Orang Asli affairs, reaching out to the minister in charge of the development of and contacting various other related agencies, I received no response. I actually tried to call and tell people, hey look, there is a problem that we need to address, all right? But nothing happened. Nothing happened. So I had no choice but to publish all these pictures. And then, of course, after these stories came out all over the country as well as abroad, all hell broke loose. Everybody was coming to the landfill. Some were accusing me of manufacturing these pictures. So this is my old editor. His name is Ilmu Hasanah. And in fact, I went to him first when I couldn't get any help from the government, and then finally he intervened, and he has done so much more now for this community of Orang Asli. This is today. They are doing well. I might need a few more minutes. This is the community today. They are very intelligent. This group, these two girls, three girls, and 2 girls and a boy, they go to school now. They still don't have electricity, so they study by candlelight. They have water, which is being given. They get water from the Global Peace Foundation. It's an NGO that goes there to help with water filtration devices and also solar panels. So they've been doing that for them. And once these stories were published, all these people came together to help. So many NGOs came together. And this is what I mean by the transformative power of photojournalism. People see this and they react. They should just act, and not react, but they should just act, right? They're lovely. These children are just amazing. They are so smart. Every Monday I teach math and physics and some photography to refugees in a school in Kuala Lumpur, school called Dignity for Children. And I actually have a few Orang Asli children too, who are in my class. And they are brilliant. They are simply brilliant. If only given the opportunity, they would do so well in school, right? They love to read. Those who can, they enjoy reading. So what I also do is to bring books and magazines for them so that they can actually partake in the knowledge that's only found in books. They make up their own games. Good nutrition is important. And today this is the Global Peace Foundation, and they're working with this community. They've given them, they make these little areas where the community can get together and discuss issues and problems. They've built all these places on their own. with the help of the with the help of the NGOs, they've actually built homes on their own. They've built, they have their own power supply. You can see how they have solar power now that runs the pumps. They're growing their own vegetables. Now this is very interesting because the Orang Asli in this country are not agrarian, right? They've always been hunter-gatherers. So they go out into the forests, they forage, they get their food, they hunt, they get their wild boar, they get their monkeys, and they eat that. All right. So they've never had to grow their own food. But now, we have now introduced agriculture to them. And they're doing so well. Permaculture, which is fantastic. They're growing their plants, the vegetables within rainforest. I wouldn't say rainforest, within areas where there's jungle, right? And it grows well. You know those two kids who were in the landfill earlier with a pacifier in the mouth? These are the two kids now. Well dressed, going to school, and that's their mother. So they've been given agricultural equipment to plant, to loosen the soil. He's trying to make holes in the soil. The soil in Mozam Shah is very hard, very hard, and a lot of clay. So it needs to be aerated. It's a small harvest, but now they're doing really well. Look at that. You know, I have brought with me today, I bought about 10 packets of chips, right, that these people have actually grown, cooked, and packaged in such a professional way. You'll see them on the shelf, and you can try them too, right? And this is this for me makes it all worthwhile. When you see a community, when you come up and they're doing well. They're growing their own food, something that they never did, right? This is the crepe, which they make, and it's quite amazing. And it's really well packaged, and it's there on the shelf. You can actually open one and try it and eat it. Right? Look at that. They have solar power now. They have a refrigerator, a freezer. So all these things are possible, and all because of one stupid journalist who went there, me, who went there and decided to do something. Right? It's possible. Right? This is what I do as well. As part of my own CSR program, whenever I sell photographs, I need to earn a living. And whenever I sell any photographs, the profits from that go toward buying milk for these children. It's very important because nutrition for these children are so important because the mothers themselves who are breastfeeding don't get good nutrition at all. So I have found in two villages that I go to help, every month I send about 10,000 ringgits worth of milk products to these children. And they become, really very attached to me whenever I go there. And you can see huge difference in they don't have bloated tummies anymore. The color of the hair has changed. These are all signs of better nutrition. And you can see this such a positive change. And this is what I think I live for. To be able to go out and do these things. And these are the results. You don't need any thanks from anyone. It's just so heartening to see communities do better. Yep, sorry. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shekar, for that journey that you went through. I think the pictures you take, I always am amazed with how you have structured it and how you put it. I don't know what's the journalist way of, framing the scenes and all that. The part where we have heard about orang aslis being taught with teaching them how to do planting the vegetables. Those are something that we have started as well. I think it was a cue from Shekar on the struggles that they had. So we funded quite a few of our projects to help them grow vegetables. They always say when it comes to environment sector or ecosystem, it's always the doom and gloom. But I think for us, it's really about bringing the issues out in the open and see how we can help, right? It's not to dwell on the issues, but really go out and then how do we then look at solving the solution. So Global Peace is one of our partners, and we've been working with them to teach the orang aslis to plant the vegetable. It's not an easy journey. As what Shekar mentioned, they're not farmers, agrarian. So sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. But it has to be continuous, right? And so this is not just the only organization that we support. We've got others as well. There are some YKPM. We've got EcoBuy that are working closely with the orang aslis in the state of Pahang. We are trying to do a lot of things, but in a very small steps. Thank you, Shekar. You guys can have your questions and answers, questions ready while we have our second panelist, Amy Chew. She's a journalist. I've been for quite some time, written for CNA, Al Jazeera, you can Google her up, but centered along a lot of issues with regards to the economy, global political developments, and how it relates to environment, and also in some way food security, right? So I find it very amazing that the part of the write-up and how she has put that into words, and it's very catchy and easy to read, right? So she's written about the growth of Indonesia and how the hub for batteries and how that's affecting our environment, right? To tie into those aspects. So without further ado, maybe Amy can share a little bit about why you're doing this, what's keeping you awake at night, and how do you tell the story, and why do you do so?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. And before that, I want to say thank you, Shekar, for that amazing session. I just want to say that as a journalist, I'm really moved, Shekar, and actually Shekar's known me since I was 18 years old, because that's when I first started working. And I'm just speaking from a perspective of a journalist. I can see, I know Shekar, since I was 18, but I could see from this picture that it is really wonderful to see, and to see that even up until today that there are journalists who don't just come and do a story and just see, you just record it, you go there. So it's like an event that's happening, like an issue, and then you just see. But looking at the pictures and of course listening to Shekar speak, you can tell, and I'm sure all of you must have felt it, even if you don't really articulate in your mind, that you can tell that Shekar lived with them. Shekar could breathe what they were breathing, and Shekar could feel, like how hot it is under the sun, how hard it is just to get water to drink. And I'm really moved, really, and all those points that you make, and because I know time is of essence, but just one small point that I just want to follow up on what Shekar said about how brilliant these children are, and I can understand, why kids from such background are so brilliant, because like for us, we wake up in the morning and you turn on a tap and the water comes out, but like for them, it's like a mountain to climb, and you have to be so creative. How do I get the water? How do I get to the water? And then the other thing is that after getting to the water, how do I carry it? And it's so heavy carrying waters, to take it back home. And yeah, Shekar, thank you, it was amazing. So just very quickly, just for background, I actually worked in Indonesia for 12.5 years. So all those times when you were breathing in this haze, I was actually in the middle of the forest. So this is just one of the many things that I've covered, and I've been to forests, and I've been to indigenous dwelling places. So I've also been to kampong. It's not just orang asli. I've been to kampong where where there's no water during the musim kemarau. So, all those things that, Shekar's pictures and Shekar's story, you could apply to so many others, people in different parts of the world, not privileged enough to live the life that we have. So anyway, just moving on, because when I met Ivy, she was asking me about environment. I actually prepared something on liners, but she brought out about the nickel mining. So anyway, because this is Malaysia, so I'll just start off with a very Malaysian example or story that I covered, and that was a long time ago when I first came back. And one of the issues that I covered was the rare earth mining plant in Linus. And today, because it's very controversial, so I would just like to talk about how the people got together to form the Save Malaysia Stop Linus plant. So actually, Malaysia's history of rare earth did not just start with Linus. It started much, much earlier on, back in the 80s, when there was an Asia rare earth plant in the state of Perak, in this place called Papan, and where it produced waste which were really toxic and radioactive, and it resulted in a lot of cases of leukemia and other kinds of problems, health problems, including I remember reading about this woman who said that she was pregnant at that time, and now the child is disabled. So there are many incidents of this in Papan. And what happened is that it did not just shut down by itself. It took a monumental effort by the people living in that area. So what I'm trying to say is that when we talk about toxic environmental surroundings, it's never going to just have the local government or government going to take action. It all comes from the people. All of it, and rare earth is a mineral that is used in so many things. It is in your mobile phones, in your computers. It's in your very nice screen here. There is a rare earth, but I hope that when you look at it, you must realize that there is such a huge environmental cost to all of this. And it's going to get more and more, because our transition to so-called cleaner energy also throws up a lot of waste. But before I go into that, let me just quickly go into the activism that the people in Pahang did. So when I went there to meet them in 2012, they were telling me that none of them knew about this Linus plant that was going to happen. And the only reason they found out about this was because of a very amazing article written by a journalist from New York Times called Kenneth Bradshaw. So I'm actually very grateful to him too. So they were very shocked when they found out, oh, there is this rare earth plant that's going to be built in our backyard. And so, as this activist said that, so we went and bising, she told me, and when they bising, and that's when they bising to the chief minister, and then he asked for the state government and Linus to have a town hall meeting. So I think quite a lot of people turned up, and it was only after this bising that also that Linus decided to make public their plans for this plant. But having said that, if you look at the facts of it, it was very half-hearted, because what happened was that, so they published they put it in a book. It's over 300 pages of what is this plant what is this plant they're going to build, and it was displayed at a public library in Pahang from working hours, and it wasn't for a very long period too. I can't remember now, because it's been such a long time that the activists can't actually remember. But there was one thing that I truly remember when I was there. They only gave everyone who wanted to read it only 1 hour, and you have to surrender your phone, because I had to surrender my phone, so you can't even take pictures, and it wasn't available online. So and they displayed it for 1-2 months, and then that was it. So what this Linus NGO did, they were amazing. So they assembled a team of people. I think at that time they told me there were about 70 people. So every day they would have a team of people going down there to copy the report. So when the 1 hour is out, then the person would leave, and then another person would go down there, and then they would copy again. You know, and I thought that was absolutely brilliant, and it was also a very, very muhibah effort. You know, it was really so heartwarming for me as a Malaysian. Like everybody just came about, people of all different ages. You know, everyone from lawyer, teachers, retirees, civil servants, students. Housewives, grandma, grandpa. I met so many of them. It was wonderful, you know, and everybody was really, really dedicated and very committed. And I think that there were, and the group that was formed was at least 300 of them. So that was what they did. And whatever notes that they copied, they would have somebody was in charge of compiling it, and then they sent it up to the experts to decipher what all of this meant, because you know, as layperson you don't really know. And I spoke to a material scientist whom I was lucky enough to call my childhood friend. He's Malaysian, and he told me that he said these things, one of the most important thing for this is how you handle the waste. The handling of the waste is very, very important. And unfortunately, one of the recommendations made by all the regulators is that Linus has to build what we call a permanent disposal plan, PDF. So we refer to it as PDF. Not a PDF on your computer, but PDF to hold this waste. Oh, 10 minutes, okay. And but PDF to hold this waste, but until today, it's been like 12 years, this PDF is still not built. So our science and technology minister himself has said that since 2012, Linus has produced approximately 1.08 million metric tons of radioactive waste. And that amount is expected to reach 1.2 million metric tons by July this year, by this month. And so what our government has done is that by the end of this year, Linus cannot crack and leach this minerals, rare earth anymore in Malaysia. They will have to move it back to Australia, where a plant is being built. Originally, they were supposed to move by the middle of this year, but they gave them an extension to the end of this year. And so, for now, you know, Pahang still has this waste. And I was just speaking to some of the activists. This waste is there, and you can see it. And it's not like the tanam, you know, somewhere in the ground. It's like, it's housed in this thing like a gazebo. So you have this structure like a gazebo, but there are no walls. And even though, you know, it's been categorized that it's low radiation and low risk, but as the residents told me, they said that yes, you can say that it's low risk and low radiation, but it's the accumulation of it. They've been exposed to this for like more than 12 years. And as you know, and during the monsoon, there is a lot of rain and there is a lot of wind. This waste will be blown, especially when you see that it is, you know, there are no walls surrounding it. And this is what has caused so much concern to the people of Pahang. And they were also telling me that this call to stop the cracking and leaching actually came when, in 2018, by the then Environment Minister, Yo Wee, and she was the one who first mooted this idea. So there you have this thing about Linus, and so that's one part of it. The second part of it is that rare earth is very greatly needed because it's also used in missiles and, you know, like and in the weapons in the defense industry as well. So it is something that is very much that people need, and I expect that need to be even higher when we shift even more, you know, to electric vehicles and other stuff. So we have to think about waste. We have to think about are more going to come here? You know, what kind of standards do we have? And also the other thing is corruption, because corruption truly can kill people, because what it can do is that people, different countries and agencies can be paid to look the other way. I'm not saying this is what's happening now, but we have to think about these things because it is to do with our health. If any one of us who ever had a loved one who died of cancer, you know how horrific it is. Cancer is horrible and it spreads. And it takes up so much of our resources too, because you have to pay for the healthcare, you know, like you have caregivers, anyone who has looked after someone who is ill. You know, COVID would tell you that it is really horrible. You know, when you have someone who is sick, I'm sure some people in the room would have met people who had been ill. Being a caregiver is also very draining on a country's resources and also resources in a family itself. So, you know, the environment is truly precious and it is something that we have to think about. So, I also want to talk about why it is important for us to care about what's happening in the rest of the world. Because 5 minutes left, okay. Because right now, you have to think about the geopolitics of rare earth. Because right now, China accounts for 63% of the world's rare earth mining and 85% of rare earth processing and 92% of the rare earth magnet production. And what does this is that it makes the rest of the world very insecure because they do not want, in the Western world for example, and anywhere else in the world, because they do not want to be so dependent on one country. The war in Ukraine has made people become even more insecure because they have seen how this war led to the EU countries' supply of gas and oil become suddenly being very insecure because you know there were sanctions on Russia and the price of oil and gas has just shot through the roof and then it leads to this very high inflation. So because of the geopolitics of rare earth, where China is such a dominant supplier, all these other countries will come to other parts of the world, including Malaysia. What I find very interesting was that when Linus' license was due to expire, our minister was approached by quite a few foreign diplomats and basically, you know, asking them to extend. And I don't think that there was this level of lobbying like when they first came here. Not that I'm aware of, or maybe I was just not aware. but really, this time around there were many who went to lobby him, not just from the Australian embassy. And one of the reasons, you know, it's the geopolitics, and that is why it is important for Malaysia to know and to read and to be aware of what else is happening, because it will come back to us. It will come back to our backyard. And as you know, as you can see, the fact that we have over 1 million ton of waste where there is no permanent disposal plant until today in Pahang, and looking back on what happened in Papa, you know, we don't have really such a good history of handling of waste, and also the way in the way this whole thing has been managed. So it is important for us to know and to be aware, because prevention is better than cure, as we all know. I'm running out of time. The other thing that I just actually wanted to talk about is the haze, because it is a very hot weather and it's El Nino, and so we feel this haze from Indonesia only when it comes over here. But for people in Sumatra and in Kalimantan, these fires happen almost every year. Having said that Indonesia has been very successful in bringing it down because of better management, also cracking down on corruption, because people used to pay people to look the other way and then they can just get this land concession again. You know, corruption is actually truly is a very deadly thing, and so we only get the haze. But for people in Sumatra, in Kalimantan, they literally live in this hellhole. I've been to the epicenter. I couldn't even see my own 5 fingers in front of me, and I'm like, oh, what? I can't see, and it was really scary, like when I was going there, and it's very, very back-breaking travel there because you travel for many hours. I fly all the way to Pekanbaru, the provincial capital of Riau, and then I have to travel by car for about another 8-9 hours. And when I reached a certain point, I first of all I went to Dumai to cut down on to have a break, stay there overnight, and then I traveled for another that's when I traveled for 5 hours or more. And I was just enveloped in this fog. Visibility was zero. I don't even know whether a car was going to hit me. And I could hardly breathe, even though I was not wearing this mask. I was wearing a more coverage mask, even though it was very hard to breathe. And I remember I had 2 Indonesian environmentalists who came with me. They wanted a lift, and I was very happy to have them. And by the time you go there, you're really quite stressed out. And I remember when I arrived there, the 2 environmentalists got down and started smoking. And I'm like, do you want to add to this smoke? But it was really sad seeing the Indonesians living like this year in, year out. I've not been back because I've been here, and the smoke has come down. But what I'm saying is that we cannot just wash our hands of this, because some of these plantations that start the fire, our Malaysians actually own it. And I know of at least one very big Malaysian company where they have been sanctioned, the general manager in jail because they were found guilty of starting the fires. And one of the reasons why these fires start is because it is much cheaper to clear the land that way when they do their replanting. And so instead of just chopping down, 1 minute left, okay, instead of just chopping it down and letting it rot and it becomes fertilizer, so it's very cheap. You just burn it. It's very cheap, and then there you go. And then you can and then you can just replant it. It doesn't take time. It's very cheap, and that's why we all have the haze that we have. But what it does, that, as you know, it contributes to this built up of carbon dioxide, and that's when you have this change in the weather patterns. I mean, it all comes from that and this pollutant. So one of the things that I would really like to urge in my talk today is that please do find the time and the interest to read up more about what's happening outside, because what happens outside will come to us. It will come to us whether we like it or not. And it is important to know so that we are better prepared, when it happens. And the last point I'd like to make is that, we live in a world that is so full of consumerism now. And it comes back to haunt us now, because we are every time I go to have the new phone, the new computer, and that's when it raises the need for all these rare earth minerals. And the environmental cost of digging up the earth for all this is really, truly huge. And what I would love, it's my hope that we should actually talk to the manufacturers. We don't need a new model every year. That's what they have. And I'm actually very pissed off. When I first used Samsung, I could if the battery is dying, you can just go and buy a new battery and you put it in now. But now it doesn't work that way, right? You literally have to buy a new phone. I mean, why do we need to do that? And then what happens to all this battery? It poisons the earth. This is poison, and I hope you look at it that way. And that we need to get together and tell that, hey, we want you to make not just a sustainable car, but also a sustainable phone, sustainable computers where we can recycle, where we can extend the life, not buy a new one. Because all of this is just going to make the manufacturers richer. And then what are we left? And then what are we left with? And what do we pass on to the next generation? So thank you very much for coming here today.
for a very personalized outlook on the issues. I never expected them to be the activists here, but more sharing their journey and telling the stories, right? So, in speaking about the Ukraine case, we know that there's a fight over the grain issues. Many may not, we read it in news, it's happening, many thousand miles away from us, has no effect on us, but it actually does, right? It affected when there was a time when we didn't have bread, because our supply was affected, the supply chain was affected, and also affected fertilizers, right? Ukraine, Russia is the biggest producers of fertilizer in the whole world. So if you're doing agriculture, you go and nak beli baju ke, tak boleh, because they make it. So there is that sort of a codependence on a lot of things that are going around the world that we have to be aware of. We have to dig in and see how does that affect us. So that's in a broad way, that kind of situation, which I think from Amy herself, interviewing, I think the President Zelensky was quite a bit of a big deal. I think.
If I may, because I was discussing this with Ivy, why we should care about this. So I just want to share with you, like last year when this war came out, and I did quite a lot of stories on food security as well. And I was speaking to this food expert, and he was telling me that, and this was last year, he was telling me that because the price of fertilizer shot up too, and it was becoming very scarce. He was saying that, for example, like Thailand bought a lot less fertilizer. And as you know, we are not self-sufficient in rice, we import. And one of our biggest sellers, Thailand and Vietnam. So Thailand bought a lot less fertilizers. And so because when you buy a lot less fertilizer, you also plant a lot less. And because you plant a lot less, your harvest will also be a lot less. Of course, definitely there'll be enough for Thailand itself. But what about to sell? So definitely there'll be a lower amount that's being sold. So what's going to happen? Prices will go up. And so, so last year when I talked to him, he said, of course for now we are fine because, everything's planted and harvested. But he was talking about the following year. And President Zelensky said the same thing to me when I interviewed him last year. He said that it looks, for now it's fine, but then also the harvest has been done, and then also everything is kept in a silo. But when everything in the silo is emptied out, that's when you will see hunger much worse than what it is. But coming back closer to where we are right now, so and since after talking to this expert about less harvest from Thailand, so you can just imagine what it's going to be like. And we all know that when food prices go up, the people will be will be suffering, and the people will also be very unhappy. And when people are not properly fed, also it can lead to unstable politics, as we've seen in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was a very extreme example of that. It started with that, and we all know that we need political stability. Everyone knows that, and so it is important to know what's happening and not just think that sangat jauh dari kita, but it's actually it's sangat dekat dengan kita, setiap hari. And I know I sound very Indonesian, but that's 12.5 years of Indonesia coming out, but this is what it is. So I do urge all of you to take an interest. It is not about trying to be clever. It comes back to us. It will come to you. You just don't realize it. You just don't see it because not enough is talked about it.
I think related to that, in terms of food security and our self-sufficiency, Serena works on paddy here in Malaysia. So she's from KRI and trying to look at how we can improve our self-sufficiency for our rice demand in the country. So these are issues that we should be aware of, and I think it's great that it's being brought up. But I think we will have to look at how we can find a solution for this.
Just one point, since Serena's here, just for the general audience, so there was, when this war started, Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world, and so what happened is that when the rates couldn't go out and prices just shot up by a lot in a double digit, and so the UN, Turkey, Ukraine and Russia, they managed to get together and they signed what you call the Black Sea Grain Deal, which allowed them to export the grain, the corn, and everything else that needed to be exported outside of the Black Sea, so they could export it out. The ships could come, and Russia said that they will not attack. But unfortunately, Russia has now pulled out of the deal. I think on 1st of July, and so now no grain is coming out again. So for now, it's just okay. But prices have already shot up. You will still have enough supply, but people are going to go hungry in poor countries like Afghanistan, Africa. So what I'm trying to say is that Ukraine is negara yang pun ada jasa terhadap dunia, because they are feeding the world, and so this is going to happen, and the fertilizers again. So we are in for a pretty rough ride, and so yes, I know, like in small countries,
So my question
like
for
Singapore,
you
for
is,
example,
when you're writing about community,
but what
do you
Singapore
ever
has
face
done
like
very
any
successfully
comments that are saying that the way that you write about community is not dignified? Because I came from, because I'm working a lot with community leaders, teachers and students, so
storage.
there's a lot of stories about them. As someone working in an NGO, I would like to raise awareness about them by telling the reality as how it is.
But the thing about Malaysia that's very sad for me
that
to
we
see
want
these days is that so much of our food is
to the
imported
main
now.
character and hero of their own story. So we want to make sure that they look dignified, they sound dignified in when we're writing their stories. But then how do we find the sweet spot between writing reality as it is, and at the same time we want to dignify the main characters in the community? Yeah, that's from me. Thank you.
Okay, I think to start any writing or any interview, you must look at the subject with empathy and respect. Right? If you start on those lines, then you'll find that everything that you write about the community will be hinged on respect. And when you do that, you'll find that everything they say to you, when you talk to them in the same way, when you talk to them, they will actually talk to you and give you the kind of information that you're looking for. How else can I say this? It is how you put yourself out. You have to put yourself out open, you have to be honest, and then you will find that the information that comes to you will also be the same way. So you have to be respectful. And when you're respectful, then you'll find that whatever you write will be meaningful to the community. Do you want to add?
Thank you, Shekar. I think you've given the Orang Asli a lot of dignity, and as said, he spent 1 year living with them. But thank you for the question, Asmara. I think it's a great question. And what Shekar says is true. I mean, even as journalists, when we go there and then you're like so under stress, especially we work for a while, and I used to work for Reuters. Like, you're always pressed for time, and I do tell young reporters, please don't go there just like looking for a quote. I mean, you do need to go and look for a quote, but going there, just quickly get a quote and extract yourself and then write your story. Because when you do that, you don't capture the essence of it. You don't really capture who is he. You don't really understand that person a little bit better. And it's no point writing about something when you don't build bridges, number one. When you don't build bridges, then nothing change. And to get the dignity, and I know that when you go and approach someone, it is very normal to have a certain idea, oh, this person is like that. You try to do your research, I try to research as much as I can. And then when you go there, and oftentimes it may be as what you had expected, sometimes it is not. And you must go there, number one, with respect, and number two, with a very open mind, that what you think and what you read and what you heard may not be as it is. And when you go there, and when you see that it is not as you had hoped, then do change your mind, do change the framework in which you had wanted to write that. because every person is an individual and everyone has their soul, and our job is to reflect that soul and the dignity. So for us, maybe when you look at the orang asli, you may think that, not very dignified, going to get water in a stream or trying to get make money out of a landfill. But for me, I think that they are so courageous. Shekar's story really did. And do you know why I say it's courageous? They are not begging. They're not asking people to give them anything. And Shekar has truly given them dignity. And so that is what it is, to show people that people can be different, that people can be poor, but people want to be acknowledged for the effort that they give in living out their lives, in what they do to feed themselves, their children, their aged parents, in how they live their life. I see so much dignity, even amongst refugees, when I used to work with refugees in Hong Kong, and Vietnamese refugees actually. So we all want to be respected, and by right, they too want to be respected. And to respect people is to approach them with respect and to open up your heart to their lives in which they are showing to you. Thank you.
One more thing, I'll just add to that. Sometimes it's very important to tell the truth, even if it hurts. Right? And in the case of the Orang Asli story, it was very difficult to even take these pictures, let alone publish them. Because you come to a conflict stage. How can I show these people who I respect so much in a dignified way? It was impossible to do in this particular circumstance. I came back home and cried many times. Grown men do cry. And it was very difficult. It was very, very difficult to see this. And when I lived there for that year, that question that you just asked, how do I show this community in a dignified way? But you can't, because the object of these pictures was to show how badly they were being treated and how society had somehow forgotten about them. So the object here was very important. And that was why the pictures were fashioned in the way they were.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. I'm Arini from YASA, Mental Illness Awareness and Support Association, Assistant Manager of Research. And I have a question to Mr. Shekar. I'm just curious, because your picture really tells stories, right? But how do you plan to take pictures? I mean, do you plot the story first and then look for the angle that suits the plot, or do you just come on the ground and then see, this is actually happening and this is the best angle? I'm just curious of that. And then if you'd like to share. And then for Miss Amy, I'm actually from Indonesia.
Selamat siang.
So when I heard actually it's a quite new perspective too, even though for me as an Indonesian, and I would like to say thank you so much for sharing that, because I don't know, even maybe when we are not there as in really experiencing the event, because you say it's actually they actually face it every day, while we are just almost every day, right?
I do not know about now because I've not been, and then COVID again, so yeah. But when I was there, that's what they told me, almost every year.
Right. Well, maybe we're here from Malaysia. It's just quite once in a few years, for example. But then when you share that, if we know, make ourselves know the information firsthand, then maybe we can be more prepared for the conditions, right?
I'll just very quickly. So I just want to say that when I was living there, and the other thing that amazed me also when I came back from all this burning forest, you go to Jakarta. Jakarta doesn't get the haze because the wind doesn't blow into Jakarta. So I think that when you have we all know that the government is in Jakarta, right? So when all this bapak-bapak and ibu-ibu pejabat that are there, the bapak-bapak menteri and the ibu-ibu menteri, they don't really see it also. But I have to say that, and it's been internationally acknowledged that all this deforestation has greatly reduced under President Jokowi. I'm not campaigning for him again. Anyway, he can't stand for elections.
Right, yeah. But the thing that I want to mention is just thank you so much for the news perspective, which is a very positive perspective, and also I think it's a quite individual prevention for our own self. At least psychologically, if we know something like that can happen, then we are kind of prepared. Even though we of course we don't hope, right? But at least we expect that. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. Whenever I take on any assignment, the first thing that I do is I try not to go there with any preconceived ideas. You go there and you assess what's happening. We are humans and we get emotionally entangled with what's happening in front of us. But you just need to be aware of that. Very often when I go for an assignment, I would go there and just observe. I don't even take my camera out. For two reasons. One is you don't want to intimidate the people you're going there and working with. You're trying to tell this story, so listen. Listen to them. Ask them questions and listen to them. Don't make it look like you're going there to just go out and get a story and then you're going to come back and publish it. No. You need to genuinely understand and listen to what it is they're saying. And the whole idea again is not to react, it's to act. Don't react. Because when you react, you make mistakes. You act. You go there and look at what's happening. And then so how do I plan my stories? How do I plan my pictures? I go there and let it flow. You can see things happening. And when these things unfold in front of you, you start recording. I also do something called oral history, where I sit down and I record the voices of people when they talk to me. And this again becomes a very powerful way of coming back and having an exhibition perhaps, and having voices behind the pictures so that people can actually relate to it. So it's very important to do that.
Right, thanks Shekar, thanks Amy. I think we're running very short of time, but both panelists are here. You can approach them independently.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm from Shalom. Let me address this question to Shekar. When you took the picture and also you do the recording and everything, I believe this is a very important message and a wake-up call for the government of the day to look into the matter of the people and the indigenous people who are living in a very badly. And you mentioned just now that you have never seen this you have seen this in other country, but it's happening in Malaysia. But I believe that this is a responsibility of the stakeholder and also the people of the country to look into this matter. So this is a very serious issue with regards to matter of education and the privileges of their rights as their citizens of the country. So it was not addressed properly. This is a question that I would like to ask, that do you prepare special reports against this? Basically all media internationally, they prepare very strong reports and they will be addressed through the parliamentary system where every voice can be heard. So like imagine like New Zealand. So New Zealand, they have a very serious community like indigenous people, like Maori people living in New Zealand. So they took this thing very seriously on that matter. So I just want to ask, how do you look into it and what are the message they want to deliver to the people of Malaysia and the day of the government to look into this matter? Thank you.
Yes, when this story was published and everybody got to know about it, it was actually discussed in Parliament. It was, and this topic about Orang Asli affairs and the fact that they were not being given the attention that they need was brought up. Unfortunately, it only happened after the newspaper reports came out, were published. All right. So there's always this think that, if I can't see it, it doesn't affect me. And that's how generally problems are in this country, that it has to affect you before you do something about it. Or it has to embarrass you before you do something about it. So that's what happened in this case. Yes, we did try, and in fact, there was a report that I wrote and handed it to my own counselor, and of course, the king and queen, who are from Pahang, and they actually acted on it once they found out what was happening, and they are actually now doing a lot of work. In fact, the queen has for a very long time been working with the indigenous community in Pahang, and she's come up with a recipe book as well with indigenous recipes. So I think there are people doing the right thing. It's just that we need to pool our resources together so that we can do things collectively. Now, the fact that the NGOs came together, they couldn't have done what they did without assistance from Yayasan Hasanah and all the other NGOs as well. You have ECM Libra Foundation, you have different people coming together. So it is a collective effort. One person cannot do this. And we need to understand that. I can't do this by my own. All I can do, I'm just an instrument, all right? And what I'm doing is I'm just highlighting the stories, and then somebody else has to do it. But I will keep pursuing this again and again till you get the response from government and parliament and legislators to do something about it.
Thank you, Shekar. Do you have anything to add, Amy? If not, I'm just saying that, both are here. You can approach them. But I think...
Okay, maybe just one last point, because this is going to be a really big thing. We are all transitioning, so-called fossil fuel to the green energy. So what's happening now all over the world, we're busy digging up the earth again for nickel, for lithium, cobalt. These are things that you need to go into the electric vehicle battery. But again, it is very polluting, and it's also not just that. It is also the workers suffer tremendously. Yes, I know these workers may not be here, but what they dig up for us comes to us. So I think that we need to spare a thought for those poor people digging up. And again, I go back to Indonesia because I recently just interviewed this young boy. There is this place in Sulawesi where there have been a lot of accidents. People get killed, and it's very hot in there when they're, when they're processing this nickel in the smelters, and then people get burned and explosion. And so I was looking desperately to speak to a worker there, and I managed to find one all the way from here, online, but he is a valid person and I was talking to him, and he was so intelligent. You could tell that he was just so intelligent. Bahasanya bukan bahasa seorang buruh kasar. You could just see that he was so intelligent. So I had to ask him. So he was building a coal plant, and he told me he had to climb up very high. And he told me he was very scared because the safety harness is not working in proper working condition. And then I asked him. I said, Maaf, are you a university graduate? You're so articulate and so intelligent. He said, I'm in my final year. He's a forestry student. And the reason he's working because the keluarganya miskin. And so he has to do this very, very dangerous job. And apart from climbing up to install pipes, he told me one of the other things I have to do is to lift this steel bars which are so heavy. He told me that ini seharusnya bukan manusia yang angkat. He said it should be done by a crane, but I guess, I don't know, save money or whatever, I don't know. So humans have to lift this up. And after my story came out, I sent it to him, and then he told me, oh, Miss Amy, I just want to tell you, just a few days ago, a worker fell from a height and was seriously injured. In a pool of blood. He told me he doesn't know what happened. And this worker is from China. So I just like to end with that, because these things, all this new greener technology also has a price. And I just hope everyone in this room spare a thought for all those poor workers who truly risk their lives for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. I think, I don't think I have anything to beat that, but I think within the country, we are working on a lot of things in terms of policies and guidelines for the extractive industry. We have a policy on that, driven by NRECC, and I think it gives to thought to then look at the policies and the guidelines in terms of reinforcing it in how we are doing it. So Indonesia and Malaysia are different countries. They have different sets of guidelines and rules, but it's something to keep ourselves with. We wish for an informed society among Malaysians, and I think by listening, sharing about the difficult issues, the difficult topics that we don't get to hear very often, are things that will